Hey guys, it's Ben Reed with Next Gen Sales Leader Podcast. I have Leon Klepfish, the CEO and founder of Callingly, and welcome to the show. We are so excited to learn about your business and how you grew it.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
So I guess where do we start? What do you think is the best place to dive in here? Because I'm sure that you have a lot of stories to tell, and I know that you are a company that sells B2B, but do you want to start at the
hmm
beginning, how you founded the company, or do you want to go back further beyond that?
No, sure. I'll give a little bit of background. So I guess just a quick blurb of what the company does to give context. So Callingly is a telephony software, right? It's basically a phone system that integrates with, our customers, either lead sources or CRM usually, so that whenever they get a new, web lead or a submission from Facebook, something like that, we actually dial out to their whole sales team, get someone on the phone, and then dial the lead for them immediately, right? So the goal of our software is so that every single hot lead you get, someone from your team is calling them within 30 seconds, right? And then in addition to that, we handle all the follow-ups, right? So if you don't reach the lead immediately, the system follows the schedule that you set up as the sales leader, and then we'll call your sales rep and make sure they follow up, 10 times over the next 2 weeks or however many times you set up. And then very recently, we also added SMS into the mix. So in addition to leaving voicemails, it also automatically sends text messages and things like that. And so our goal is to go from, hot web lead to first live conversation with the lead, and then we're done. Then your sales team could take over. But that's kind of what Callingly does. Now, obviously, I've been working on Callingly for about 6 years now. So it's been a journey, and this is kind of what's evolved into. My background is actually in engineering, so I've always been in startups, but I was a web developer. Worked in some startups, and then I was kind of director of engineering at one startup, and then VP of engineering at another. So I kind of went up the business ladder a little bit. And then I left. I got a little bit of seed funding and left to start Callingly probably over 6 years ago now. And it was so the engineering part I've always loved and been really good at, and my whole kind of perspective was always, you know, let's use the engineering superpowers to really enable the like sales and marketing teams and the kind of non-tech but like revenue focused teams in a company. And that's kind of exactly what we do. So for me, the biggest challenge has been to kind of grow out of just the engineering roots, right? Because I built the initial version of the product. Now I run a team that kind of handles it, and just recently have kind of almost stepped away from the product role, which has been big for me. But I can always build the product, but then that's the smallest part, right? Of starting a company, starting a SaaS, right? Then you have the whole business, you have the hiring and the recruiting and the marketing and all this other soft skills, right? Before I started Callingly, I'd never done a tech demo before. I've never really had to do, hop on calls and do customer support. I've never, did webinars. So all this kind of stuff was new to me. And over the years, I tackled the next thing and I kind of conquered it. And so now the biggest change, which I was talking to Ben about a while back, was that, I finally found someone that could replace me in that product and engineering role, which has been amazing. And so now my new role in the company is, head of growth. So now I have to figure out growth, and I have this whole, next list of things that I need to tackle and learn how to do. And so that's just kind of been the story of, of running Callingly. Is just, you learn, you see one daunting thing in front of you, you slowly learn how to do it, and you conquer that. And your reward for conquering that is you see the next big thing in front of you that you have to learn and figure out how to do. So that's been how it is.
So yeah, there's a lot of courage that goes into that, or maybe not for you. I mean, were you scared when you got started? Was there an unknown, like I'm like an imposter syndrome of? I'm talking about even before the sales side. I mean, even as an engineer
Mhm.
building the first product, how did you go from what did you do prior to Callingly? What was the role?
So it was VP of engineering at another tech startup here in Phoenix.
And then you decided to start this company. And what was the emotions around that? And how did you make the leap? How did you feel comfortable making the leap, or did you not feel comfortable?
So, didn't feel really comfortable. I hadn't been working on it like nights and weekends for probably about a year or two. Got it to like at least a little bit of traction. I think when I got my seed funding, it was at like 2K MRR or 3K MRR, right? So like not enough to live on, but enough to be like, okay, I have somebody willing to pay for this software. So there's something here. Now for me, the big thing was getting that seed funding because, I had enough to make sure that at least we had like a year to 18 months of runway, right? And that was enough to be like, okay, well, I have some time to figure things out, right? And it was definitely a big, big leap. I think it always is.
Mm. Yeah, what's so interesting about the last several podcasts that I've done is that it's always been a non-sales founder who has had to learn sales, which is
Mm,
fascinating because it's, usually I have always been biased towards I'm the sales guy, and so selling is easy, right? For me, because I naturally had been doing that since I was 19. So I'm trying to put myself into the mindset of, okay, I'm going in and the number one thing that matters is selling. Can you sell? Now it's the old adage of you only sell because you don't know how to market, and you only market because you don't know how to build a great, perfect, beautiful product market fit product. Uh,
mm.
and I certainly can say from Wellsite Navigator's perspective that they went from 0 to 30,000 users purely through word of mouth. And it seems like that product-led growth to a degree in the beginning is a major mover for a lot of early stage
Mhm.
founders. How did you guys get your first B2B clients?
So yeah, I mean, it was kind of word of mouth, and it was the most, engineering type of marketing, which was basically building integrations, right? Now, Callingly by its nature has to integrate with, the other pieces of your pipeline, right? It has to be able to receive the leads from your web forms. It has to sync back to your HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever it is. And so, I built integrations, and then those integrations get posted on the marketplaces and people find us that way. And it was the most engineering form of marketing, but it was, enough to get started.
So you guys relied on the marketplaces within the CRMs.
hmm
What particular was it? HubSpot and Salesforce, or what in particular?
HubSpot, Salesforce was a big one. Then you got like the Zapier and Make, the automation platforms. And then once we started to focus on some specific industry niches, one of our biggest industries is real estate. And so real estate has its own real estate specific CRMs. So we started integrating with those. And those have been big because, HubSpot and Salesforce definitely send people our way, but they're so huge that they don't actually pay attention to us. But, we integrate with some of these smaller real estate CRMs, and they would actually, do some more serious co-marketing, and that was always great.
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of salespeople miss, and I think there's actually a blessing for not being a salesperson is that you naturally fall into building something that is one useful, and you probably go for the lowest hanging fruit. You don't overthink the sales effort. So in the process, you build a great product that people need, and you choose the easiest way to get it in front of people, and therefore you get some growth. Whereas I think some salespeople will try to engineer some type of vaporware, and if anyone doesn't know what that means, it's like a fake version of software that looks real. And I certainly have been falling into that category, and it's never worked out well. It's always been like I go to the pitch and I can even sell it, but then they're like, "All right, great, we want it," and it's like, "Well, I still have to
Mhm.
build it." And generally, with any level of complexity, that could take months or a longer time. And
Yeah.
so now you're probably thinking, well, you probably could scrap something together. But my experience, at least with the B2B SaaS model in oil and gas, was they have pretty high expectations of security and robustness and certain things that you have to have in place before they'll even take you seriously. And so I really struggled with, okay, how do you know you have product market fit before you build the first prototype? And maybe the answer is not like a la Steve Blank, 4 steps to the epiphany, go out and
Mhm.
put something in the market as MVP. How did you guys think about that? How did you even know you were building the right solution, solving the right problem?
Well, it's really funny actually because again, because I'm not in, the sales and marketing space by trade, I kind of based everything that I built on customer feedback. So actually, the original version of Calling, which had a different name and everything, was a little different. It was actually a little, like a little widget. It was like a little button you put on your website, and somebody who visited your website could click that button, and they would actually be able to call you through the website, and it would ring your phone but then the audio would be like through their browser, right? So as a tech guy, this was right when WebRTC came out. Are you familiar with that at all?
No, no, I'm not.
The WebRTC is a technology which we're using right now, which lets you do audio and video in the browser, right?
Mm,
That didn't used to be a thing. You used to have to download, install a plugin, and
mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden it became something that's integrated into the browser. And I saw the early demos of this and went, this is so cool. So you could like just go to a website and talk to someone through the website. So I made this button, and it went like on Product Hunt and did all the usual stuff, and it was very popular, and everyone thought it was so cool, but no one was willing to pay a penny for it. Everyone thought it
Mm.
was super neat, but it wasn't like actually practical. But I kept at it, and then
Well, so
finally
wait,
I
let me
got.
interrupt for 1 second. So, because that is so
Mhm.
fascinating. So, two things that are fascinating to me. One is, was it a button that people could install? Like, was it a plugin, or what?
It
Like, what
was
was it?
yeah, it was like a so the website owner could install this button on their website, right? Like a
Mm.
widget or like a WordPress plugin or something. And it would be this
Okay.
button that kind of hovers in the bottom right that just said like, click here to call me. And anyone who visits the website can click it and actually like call that person through their website without
Mm.
having to install any plugins or anything.
And this was specific to WordPress at this point.
No, it was just anything. I mean, just any website you could put this on it.
Okay. And then was there, when you went on Product Hunt, and again, for those that are not early stage micro SaaS, excuse me, micro SaaS people, or like more veteran salespeople in the mid market, excuse me, I need to get some water. They're gonna not know what Product Hunt is. So can you give some more backstory there?
So Product Hunt, how do you describe it? It's a website where people post, new products and things they come out with and little widgets and things like that. This is kind of where you launch new products, and people vote them up and down, kind of like on Reddit. And this is kind of the launch plan for a lot of like little widgets and little pieces of software. You come up with a thing, you make it, you post it on Product Hunt, and you see if people like it.
So if I had to recap, you said, okay, there's this cool technology that came out. So something changed in the world. And you
hmm
were like, I'm going to create this little MVP. It's a budget button widget. And said, I'm going to allow anybody with a website to go put that out there. And the way that you got early eyeballs was through Product Hunt. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you said people weren't willing to buy. So what happened next?
So people really liked it. It got upvoted well on Product Hunt. People would put it on their site, and it would be a little bit of fun, like, oh, cool, somebody can call me through the website. But like, it didn't really, it didn't actually increase anybody's conversion rate. It didn't actually have any impact on the bottom line. Everyone thought it was neat, but it didn't have any actual impact, so people weren't really willing to pay for it. So I kept at it, and this was all like the evenings and weekends kind of a project. And then I got a couple of customers saying, okay, well, this is neat, but like, can you also, like, if they fill out the lead capture form on my website, can you call me and call them and do the same thing as the button does with, after the
Mm,
form submission? And I was like, yeah, sure, we can totally do that. And I'm like, because that's easy, right? Here I am, making this button that's using this like bleeding edge technology that just came out, and I was barely able to get it to work in like, the major browsers. And they're just like, oh yeah, can you call me when somebody submits a form? I'm like, that's super easy, right? Like that's that's a webhook. And so I added that, and then people started paying for that. Like people would
mm,
actually upgrade and pay for that, which was a small feature of this other thing. And then I realized like, hey, they're actually getting some serious benefit out of this.
mm.
And so I kind of scrapped the whole button thing, and then, refocus the company on this, like, yeah, when somebody submits a form, on your website, we call you, we call them, we connect you. And then, renamed it, rebranded it, kept going, then started building all the, CRM integrations. And then, 6 years later, here we are.
Wow. Yeah. And for obvious, this is kind of obvious to most people listening, but I'm going to say it anyways, is that the problem being solved is response times to inbound leads, right?
Correct.
You're going to higher conversions, the faster the response time. And I for sure know that inbound leads can easily get missed, especially when other people are on sales calls or whatever. And so I actually think I was an early customer of yours. I really do. I don't know
Really?
if it was the same. I'm pretty sure it was you guys several years ago, because I had the same problem, and I'm pretty sure I installed you guys. And I don't know what happened because it was a long time ago, but I remember enjoying it. And it does solve a problem, because how do you get these sales guys to call them back immediately? Well, it's like, have them call them. It seems like
Yeah.
a pretty smart way of doing it. So fascinating. There's so many little lessons here that I think are important, which is one, change in the market occurred. You went out with the bare minimum to get feedback. The feedback is what provided the key insight. The key insight is what led to a sustainable business model. And you've been on that journey ever since. Is that
hmm
true?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the it's been a journey. There's been a lot there, right? But yeah, the initial kind of part that started it all was that kind of situation.
Yeah, that's it. And you know what's so interesting about this is that there is a lot of overlap between the product market fit testing iterative cycle and the message market fit for pitch development for outbound B2B sales. And so everyone says, well, how do you refine the pitch? I'm like, well, number one, come up with an MVP. First off, know who your avatar is. Like, know to some degree who you're trying to sell to. Uh,
Mm,
Now, and then number two is come up with some type of pitch, based upon the key problems and the key solutions that you're trying to provide. And then go pitch. Now, the alternative to that is do the mom test, which I talk about quite a bit, which is just go do some anthropological, psychological research with people, right? And ask them, what are your problems? How are you solving that currently? What would you like to see? And I have found that through those conversations, I look for keywords, I look for common phrases, I look for commonalities. But then that gets you started and you go to market, and then you smooth it and iterate it over time, kind of like you did. But the most interesting thing that I have found, which seems to be true for you as well, is that somewhere in that beginning phase, whether it's within 30 days or whether it's within 6 months, there's going to be some common theme or some request coming out of the market that is like kind of like an epiphany. That's why it's the
mhm.
book 4 Steps to the Epiphany, is because there's this like,
Yep.
oh, okay, so that's what you guys want. And then just like with what product you build, it's also what pitch you build. How do you convey the pitch? So it's actually, there's a lot of overlap there. And I think that this seems obvious to those that know, and it seems completely foreign in like the dark arts to people that don't. But it's really that simple. But yeah, it's a fascinating story. So okay, so you're now well into the company. And you transitioned into the sales role. So how have you made that transition, and what's been the biggest shock to you as you've done it?
Well, so the first part was kind of letting go of the product development and the coding and all that, because that's what I've always done and that's what I enjoy doing. And like I'll see a problem crop up or something, and my immediate instinct is to just let me go in the code and fix it real quick, right? And it's like, no, like this is not your role anymore. Your role is to make a ticket, assign it to somebody else who will do it, and like focus on what you're supposed to be doing, which at this point in the game is growing the company, right? So the stepping away part was definitely a challenge, and I think I've gotten the hang of that somewhat. But then, learning this new role has always been, I don't know, it's been a slap. But, I'm the kind of person that, I read books. I write if I'm trying to learn a new hobby or do a new thing or trying to learn something new in my career, I go on Amazon and I'm like, what are some books about this topic, right? And I got a couple sales books, right? So I've been reading them, going through that, doing everything. And so that's been really helpful to even kind of get a lay of the land, right? And the biggest thing that I've run into now, starting to do some outbound kind of direct, was it cold emailing and just kind of outreach and things that I've been starting to experiment with, is just how different the day-to-day this is from the product and engineering stuff that I'm used to, right? The
Hmm.
product and engineering, it's like you're trying to build a thing, you have a ticket, you have a feature you're trying to build, you kind of plan out how you do it, and then you sit down and day by day, you build toward it. Now there's going to be issues, you're going to run into things, you might have to replan how you're going to do it, but it's very like progressive. You building something, right? You're building a tower. Sales is completely the opposite of that. Sales is like hunting, right?
Hmm.
You go into the woods, for 10 days, and you can bag something on day 1, or you could be wandering around on day 7
Hmm.
and you just have not been able to get anything, and then you finally get something on day 8, and it's like every single day you have to do it because it's a numbers game, but you have there's no sense of progress, at least for
Mm.
me, right? Like it feels like every single day is like a dice roll of whether, what I'm going to get. Now, over the long term, right, numbers even out, you get very consistent, results. But the day-to-day psychology of it is, it's not like, hey, today I'm just going to knock this thing out that I have on my schedule. It's like, today I'm going to send 100 emails, and I don't know if anybody's going to reply to me, right?
Hmm.
So it's been very different.
Yeah, there is a daunting task in the beginning of venturing into the unknown, because it is, to a large degree, until you refine the message and the ideal customer profile to such a degree that you know them better than they will ever know themselves, and you've had at least 100 of those conversations. You are searching for how to convey that in a meaningful way that just clicks. So once you hit that message market fit, and you understand exactly how to prospect. So there's the what list to curate based upon the ICP. There's what copy to be
Mm.
writing to message them. There's what exact outbound sequences to be following up with them on. So like, okay, do you call them day one, follow up with an email, wait 2 days, call them again, and send a text message to like that's all up for debate. And so
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning, it is the what makes it complex is not that you have to call or text or email somebody. It's the fact that it's like there is so much possibility that it's like, what exact thing do I do and when do I do it? And am I even going in the right direction? And so I think that's where people get dramatically
Exactly.
lost. Uh, the answer to that is there's really a very simple answer, which is you come up with your top 5 ICPs, and you go and you come up with a outbound strategy with your first campaign, and you throw darts at the wall, and you come back and you say, okay, where were we good? Where were we bad? My experience is the first 10 you do will feel like an utter waste of time. It'll feel like, what am I even doing? Like, this message isn't landing at all. And then at some point you're going to start, like, there's going to be like, it's almost like me and working out. Like when I work out, like any particular workout, I'm like, I didn't get any stronger. It's like, what the hell? This feels like
Yep.
nothing happened here. But then all of a sudden, 4 months later, I'm doing something crazy that I never thought I could do. It's the same thing with sales, where all of a sudden you wake up and it's like, oh shoot, we're actually closing at a 30% rate. And so I usually tell people, when people think about outbound selling generally, their time horizon is way too short. People are like, I want a 2-week result. And it's like, dude, you're like, no, like give yourself 18 months from start to like, I have a scaled sales team with like a fully vetted process and it's like actually working. That should be the expectation. Now, I generally say the first 3 months is for research and for A/B testing messaging and like really developing that pitch deck and that pitch and exactly what your objection handlers are and all that. And then the next 3 months is about putting that into a process and documenting it, make sure other people can do it, and then hiring your first sales hire. And then the next 6 to 18 months is about scaling that. But yeah, if when people start, generally speaking, they stop after 3 weeks because they're like, I'm not getting responses, or I'm not getting emails, or I'm not getting whatever it is,
Hmm.
and it's just they gave up way too early. Do you feel like that's something that you're experiencing, or what is your take?
Yeah, yeah, and the focus right now is on not giving up way too early, right? It's like basically what I've come up with is almost like just a daily like action goal, right? I have certain things that I need to do every single day, and I need to do them consistently, and I need to kind of review like what the results from the previous week were and learn on them. But like every single day's actions, I just need to complete those actions. I need to, I guess, almost ignore what results I'm getting, like on a day-to-day basis, right? Because it's the long term. It's almost like I don't know if you've had this. It's almost you have to like split yourself into two people, right? One is
Mm-hmm.
almost like the sales manager who comes up with the plan, writes the copy, whatever, and then the second one is the grunt who's actually
Mm-hmm.
prospecting and sending emails and things like that. And when you are in sales manager mode, you write things, and when you are in grunt mode, you do what the sales manager told you to do, right? And you don't even think about it. And it doesn't matter if you're the same, if these two roles are both you, like you switch modes. And then the worst part I found is like if when you're in grunt mode, you start to like doubt what it is you're doing and you
Yeah.
try to make changes on the fly. It's like, no, it's like you gave yourself, instructions, and you're going to follow those instructions. So that's been the
That's
hardest
where
part.
it is very hard to be both, to be a one. So you're the only person on the growth side at this point for the outbound B2B?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm figuring it out myself before I bring anybody else on for this.
Yeah, it is a challenge doing that, because you're right, is that there is the person who has to be kind of like the Jedi stoic, like we are on the path.
Yeah.
And then there's the guy who's like in there emotionally being beaten up and not seeing results, and it's just your emotional like nerve ends are on fire, and you're like, "Oh my God, I want to like quit." And by the end of the day, you're just your ears are bleeding. I get it. And so there's a reason that I do not do SDR work anymore. And this is coming from a guy, again, I've said this 1,000 times. I went door to door. I used to go, my first cold calling job was at a nonprofit environmental group called Clean Water Action. And I was literally making, I would start at 4:30, end at 9:30. We'd have a 30-minute break in between. And that was only part-time. By the end of that day, I would manually pick up pieces of paper, call them on a 1990s style phone. By the end of the day, I was like, oh, you got to get out of here. Because it's a grind. And when I was going door to
Mhm.
door and it was negative 20, 30-degree weather, it was crazy that we would do that. In Detroit, it would be like 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. People would be like, what are you doing? I had guns pulled on me. I mean, you have to have, in order to do that job, you have to have a tenacity. It's more than grit. You have to have a burning desire to persevere. Because if you don't, it's just too difficult. You have to have such a thick skin to be able to do that. So that's why it's like if you don't have that, or you can't build that, it gets very difficult after a few weeks or months. And I would say that I did that for 4 years, 5 years. After the fifth year, I had gotten to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I had burnt out. I had a burnout period
Mhm.
where I just couldn't knock on another door, make another cold call. And it wasn't a capabilities thing. I was the best out of 800 people. It was an
Mhm.
emotional thing. It was like I was just so sick of the grind. Uh, and so for me, that's when I graduated really more into the account executive role, the closing role. And I was like, you guys can handle this. I'm good there, man. And so I think that as a leader, I don't know what your revenue looks like, but as a leader, you have to ask yourself, is is that the best use of your time? And now maybe it is. Maybe you're like, well, I need to figure out what the messaging is. I think I would counter that if you had a mentor, then you would know what the right direction is, and you could focus more on the closing and on more of the strategic copywriting and the messaging side of things,
Mhm.
and then let the grunt work be done by more of an entry level person who can just say the right things. Because once you get the messaging down, the SDR is simply an interface. It's simply the copy in human form, the message delivered through a human being. And that doesn't require tremendous thinking around strategy. They just need to
Mhm.
have the right tactic and the right demeanor and the delivery. But it happens to be that easiest part of the job is also the hardest part of the job. And so for me, it's like very difficult, but it's also something you can hire out for $4,000, $3,000 a month.
Mhm.
And you can win back 80% of your time. And so I see that as a very quick win for any entrepreneur personally. I get that since it's your first time doing into that role, you're probably trying to figure it out and learn it. So anyways, what do you think about that? Do you agree with that?
Y
What's your take?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense to me in terms of, probably sooner rather than later. I do wanna find someone who can do that, but I think one of my mistakes in the past with attempting things like this, which I have attempted in the past, is just immediately going to hire someone, and it's like, "Okay, I don't wanna do this at all. I'm just gonna hire you, it says so on your resume that you do this, like, go and do this for me," right?
100%.
And then it never works out, right? So it's like, I have to know what before I hire someone to do something, I have to know what the hell it is they're doing, which usually means me doing it for at least a couple months, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like that's the only way that it ever works out. Because if I try to hire someone to do something that I've just never done at all, I just have no conception of what it is I'm paying them for, what results I should be looking for, how to mentor them in any way, because I have never done what they've done. So I think I have to tough this out for at least a few months, get decently good at it, and then I could at least have the knowledge to be able to hire someone for it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that if you are an entrepreneur at your stage, so I'm speaking to the audience now, is that to be very clear, because this is like this advice could be taken out of context and then applied to some very specific scenario that doesn't really apply, and then people will make a bad choice. I think if you are the founder of a company, you've gotten to a growth stage where you're now going outbound B2B and you are learning the skill set for the first time, I think it is a wise choice to try it out for a month or two. Just for, especially if you're bootstrapped, just to understand the lay of the land. Because I think that it's just like for me on the product management side, it's that hiring my first data engineer was really difficult because I didn't understand anything about data engineering when I first got into it. I didn't understand what the difference between a data wrangler, a data scientist, or a data engineer. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know what a schema was. I didn't know anything, And so I was sitting there trying to interview people and trying to work with people, making the wrong hires, saying the wrong things, having wrong expectations. So I think just the mere fact that you understand the pain of cold calling or the pain of structuring those processes will give you empathy during that hiring and management cycle. So I think that's fantastic. I would say that at some point, after several months of kind of getting it, my suggestion would be to hire a fractional of some sort or some type of like coach of some sort. Because the reason I say that is because for me, if I was at your stage and I was hiring a software manager of some sort and I didn't have the budget for, I'm not saying you don't, but I'm saying that if I didn't, I'm thinking in my own world, where I didn't have the budget, I would at least have a fractional or a coach that was like a CTO level type of coach, like you. I would hire you to be my coach. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to hire my first full stack guy to support me on this. I don't want to make a mistake here. I'd want some guidance around that. Because I think the problem, to your point, which is 100% accurate, if you didn't go through the learning yourself, and then you went and made a sales hire, and you said, hey, go sell. Well, there's a lot of assumptions there. There's, okay, what's the sales process? And what is the structure of the CRM? And what exactly is the messaging? What's the offer? Exactly what do they do when they ask for something or there's some objection of some sort? What happens when they say no? Where do you put them in the CRM? How do you follow up with them? Right? Like there's so many questions that
all
have
the
to
little
be answered.
details. Yep.
So you need to figure that out. And actually, you should check out in the free classroom section on the school group. I just added a new stage 1 of preparing to scale. And so I'm going to be putting a lot of resources there, but it gets deep into the sales process and then really deep into what needs to be true before you go to the growth stage. And I'm partnering with some of the better Clay agencies and experts on outbound email. And we're going to be creating a bunch of free courses around that. So since I know you're focused on the outbound emailing side, they're doing some really cool stuff and we're going to give away all that stuff for free. So you should check that out. And then I'm on stage 3. So we split the course into stage 1, 2, and 3. It's all free. Stage 3 is how do you build a sales team? What should a sales manager be doing? How do they do the hiring? I have all my sales hiring resources, my entire sales process for hiring. So all of that's there too. So that should help you get started.
Nice. Yeah, that's perfect.
So, okay. So what's next steps for you? What are you, you're currently trying to do this? Are you limited right now on an offer? Like, is the offer not landing, or is it that the offer's landing? It just seems like the pipe getting more seats or people in the seats to hear the pitch is the challenge. Like, what's the bottleneck for you guys right now?
Kind of in between. It's I feel like we're getting people in the pipeline, but then it's almost too big an ask for them to kind of start doing the demos and then the free trial, which is our next step after that, and some of the integration stuff. It's like we even like we can push people into doing that, but it does, for a product, it does require people to sit down and integrate it into their existing sales process and make some decisions and figure out how people are going to use it. And so the people that are inbound for us, this isn't an issue. And because, they saw that they had this pain point, they came to us. And then as soon as, we show them a demo of how the product works, get them set up, do the onboarding. They're super ready to get this set up, right? But then the people that we know are going to have this issue, or they have it, but it just hasn't come to their forefront yet. Um, and we reach out to them, maybe we get them on a demo, they're kind of interested, but they don't have this burning pain yet. And so they're not as motivated to go through the process of actually setting things up. And so we do have a specific plan to address this, but I'd love to hear if you have any feedback just based on that information.
Sure, yeah. So before I answer, can you walk the audience and me through what is the current from top to bottom process for cold outbound? Like, what is your current, like, whether it's cold outbound calling or whether it's emailing or LinkedIn, what does that look like? And then what steps do you take them through? What exactly are you saying at each step?
Sure. So we're reaching out to, so for example, one of the campaigns we have right now is specifically toward real estate teams that are buying leads, doing digital marketing, right? Because there's plenty of real estate teams that just work on word of mouth, and that's not our customer base, but like the ones that are actually spending good money to get online leads, those are the ones that we're going after. So we're finding them. And then we reach out, kind of all three, not so much LinkedIn, although we're experimenting with it a little bit, but cold email. And then after a couple cold emails, if that doesn't work, then we try cold call. And so we kind of, pitch them on what our offer for them is. And it's basically saying, hey, you guys are paying, hundreds of dollars per lead, right? Each potential customer is, thousands and thousands of dollars in potential sales, right? Because you sell one house these days, right? Your commission is huge with the prices of the way they are, and you think about how many, leads you guys are missing out because you're just not getting to them fast enough. Like, what's your contact rate? Like, we could pretty much double it. And then especially since this works out, because real estate teams, I don't know how familiar with you are, how they're structured, but they're not sales teams, right?
Mhm.
They're all a bunch of independent agents. They're all out doing their own thing. They're not sitting in an office. They're all out doing showings. And so when a new lead comes in, the realtor is driving and the realtor is somewhere else or doing whatever. And so they're not going to get to them for quite a while. But if we call them, they'll pick up the phone and they'll talk to the lead, right? So it's really useful for real estate. So that's why we're focusing on it.
So
So
just to
we
stop for
we
a
kind of
second. So just to be clear, so are you sending this initial offer to these real estate groups with digital ad spend via a particular software? What let's go back a step. What exactly are you doing there?
Yeah, so we're using we set up Close actually. So we set
Hmm.
up Close, and yeah, we're sending, we do some prospecting, we put the information in Close, we send an email with a couple follow-ups. And then if the follow-ups, don't get any response, then I do a cold call. Right.
Are
So
you
that's how we're
using
doing
the
it.
workflows within Close?
Yep.
So you curate a bunch of leads, and where are you getting your leads? Is it from Apollo, or are you getting it from some other database?
So it's some from Apollo, and then some kind of just manual prospecting on like Facebook and things like
Hmm.
that. You can find the people who are buying real estate ads on Facebook, right? You could
Okay.
do it by region, and then you can kind of do that.
Okay, got it. Yeah, are you aware you can automate most of that with Clay?
Um, I don't know about
Are you familiar
Clay,
with
but
Clay?
that is mostly automated. No, not
Okay,
really.
so in terms of the web scraping, so there's a bunch of, you can basically go and find out, excuse me, that my dry throat. You can go find literally like people that are spending money on Facebook for real estate people, and you can get very particular
Hmm.
and go find those profiles exactly, and then use a crawler, load into Clay into a Clay table, and then you can go ahead and then load that into through whatever API software you want to use, load that into Close or some other third-party mailing system like Instantly. So
Hmm.
you can automate that to a degree at scale. So that's a whole discussion we could have. But aside from that, still it's
Interesting.
good. And I'm going to send you a video after this podcast where I kind of go over the high level of the outbound system that I use. So I'll send that to you. I'm going to be loading it into the course as
Hmm.
well, but I think that will help. But it's okay. So I understand. So you're going and finding these guys, you're loading them into close.io, the CRM, you're putting them into workflows. Through the automated workflows, you're sending it. And then some people are replying, and they're at somewhere in that workflow, there's a cold call task to reach out to them. And
Yep.
then they jump on the call, and this is where you're delivering that conversation. Correct?
Yep, delivering that conversation, and so there's that initial conversation, and so, if they're interested, kind of the close from that conversation is, let's hop a Zoom demo, and we'll show you the software, we'll show you how it works, we'll go over, pricing and integration and figure all that out for you, right? So we get, people on there, and where we see the drop off is usually so from the demo, the close for the demo is to then sign up for a free trial, right? And there's there's two things that happens. There's a lot of people that say, this sounds great, we'll definitely sign up for a free trial, but then they don't, right? Or they do sign up for a free trial, but they never get around to actually implementing anything before like the trial runs out, right? And that's kind of the hard part, right? That's where they have to go from,
I have your
we know
solution.
this is a problem we want to address. Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what to do to fix this because I've done it. You got to get rid of the free trial. Got it.
Okay.
This is my experience with B2B sales when it comes to free trials. The free trial is introducing friction into your sales process, and it's actually preventing the purchase. Because there's a couple of things. The free trial only introduces objections. I know it's supposed to be raising trust to say, look how great this is, look how amazing this is. But the problem is that the number one reason people won't adopt in the beginning is because of change management, not because of belief necessarily. And so if the pain is big enough, they'll want the problem solved. But the problem is people get lazy in implementation, in training. And typically the person making the decision is not the person utilizing the tool at the end of the day. It's usually a sales rep, right? So it's like you have a sales manager or like some manager guy who has a budget and he's pulling the trigger going, yeah, this sounds good. You sold me. And then he has to implement it into the CRM and have these sales reps actually utilizing it. So you either have to make the trials so seamless that they couldn't like do it literally on the same call. Great. Are you ready? Great. Install. Great. Okay. You're going to start getting calls immediately. Or
Interesting.
you do not let them get off the call and get into a free trial. Every time I've ever done free trials, it has not only extended my pipeline times to close by weeks, if not months, but I tend to not close as much. And so it's much better if you absolutely feel like you have to do a free trial. And again, this is like my take. There are scenarios where free trials work. Freemium is a whole world. It works for some things. For high ticket B2B SaaS, it is my personal bias that I think it hurts you. Now, there is a caveat to that. I will do a free trial on, for example, like Wellsite Navigator. I'll do a free trial, but I won't call it a free trial, and they will pay for it. So the way I do it is it's a 30-day money-back guarantee. I'm going to give you, we don't do free trials, but we will give you guys a 30-day money-back guarantee if you don't like it. I only offer that if there's real resistance in the sales process. And you should actually check out the podcast I did with my buddy Jeremy, who launched Combo Curve. And what they found was in the first 7 months, this is in the podcast, he only closed like 10 enterprise deals. And then from, I think it was like October to November or something, they closed like 40 or something like that. And the major difference changed absolutely nothing. The only difference is they completely got rid of their free trial. That's it. That makes the biggest difference. And that's where it's like one of the things about, I think this is where like having a fractional or having somebody that knows these things will come into your sales process and they'll say, your problem isn't your pitch. Your problem isn't your prospecting. There's actually one specific bottleneck. And so what I like to tell anybody who's getting into this is you have to become a little maniacal when it comes to your conversion points across each step of the process. So from literally, okay, like you send emails, how many replies? Of replies, how many demos? Of demos, how many showed? Of the showed, how many were qualified? Of qualified, how many actually went to proposal? Of proposal, how many actually sent contract, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't know those conversion points across that funnel, then how can you know where the fall off is? It sounds like you intuitively know this is where your bottleneck is. And so somebody who's already seen that 1,000 times like me
Mhm.
is like, dude, I'm telling you, get rid of that. And now I don't know what your closing sequence looks like, but if I was on the demo, I would get them. Have you had a chance to read the pitch book that I'm not sure if did I send you my pitch book?
No, no.
So
I think you did, but yeah, I have not had a chance.
So check that out because I go through my process. But basically, my entire pitching methodology goes like this. I talk about their problems on the front end. If they don't 100% agree with me that they have that problem, like they say, like, look, like I really want to solve this. I never even talk about the ideal solution, and not my product. Like I just won't. I'll be like, okay, you don't have a problem. I'm not going to try to solve this for you. And that's called the takeaway in sales. And so the takeaway is one of your
Mhm.
strongest things you can do is that if you it's like the anti-salesperson. Like, hey, is it like, you're not a good fit. Every time I've ever done that with a kind of on the edge person, they always come back towards me. They're like, no, tell me about what you do. So that's the first thing is define the problem. If they're not begging for a solution, hey man, this doesn't seem like you have a real problem. You guys don't really care about your response times. It sounds like you already have a fit for that. It sounds like your guys are getting to them. No worries. We're not a good fit for you. End of call. Okay. Second point. Then you say, okay, well, let me describe what we think the ideal solution is. Put aside callingly. This is what I think it is. I think it's, I would want my guys to respond immediately as soon as an inbound call came in so that they're on the call with that guy ready to support them. Do you agree? If they don't agree on that ideal solution, then you have to ask, what do you think is the ideal solution? And if there's some newfound thing that is kind of tangential to what you do, I would consider potentially building that if enough people said that. That being said, given this specific scenario, if you know these people well enough, my assumption is they're going to go, that would be amazing, right? And then you go, well, that's actually exactly what we do. And then I would
Yeah,
say,
right.
right? And that's it. So once they say problem agreed, solution agreed, the sale is done. You've already sold them. The question is price, and the question is, do they believe that your solution, your specific tool can actually do the job? So the only part of the rest of that presentation,
Mhm.
excuse me, is to show them the most basic, the minimum viable features without going into a full demo that they need to see to know that that is true. And so for me, I wouldn't even go into a full demo. I would just say, I'd have one example, like on your computer. I would do a screen share and I'd say, okay, I'm going to show you
Mhm.
this. Here's my CRM. I'm going to fill out a lead form. Ding. See how it's calling me? Hey there. That would be it. Do you want me to do that for you guys? And if they say yes, then I'd be like, great, let's get started right now. Here's the pricing. Da 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 da. Go ahead with the cart. And I would close right there.
Mm.
Um, I think you're
So
gonna
our
see,
demo is basically that.
except for the trial.
Uh, yeah, except for the trial, right? So usually it's funny. So that's basically our demo, right? We show live form submission, show how it works, get the call, show them the recording, everything like that. There's usually a lot more questions about how does this fit into their existing sales process because everyone has their own sales process, but we cover that. But then, yeah, so then our pitch from there is like, okay, great. Like, let's, sign you up for that free trial. But what you're saying is we go into like, here's what it's going to cost. Let's start setting you up right now. Is that right?
Yeah, and I also would have. So here's the thing about the pitch is I don't want to introduce objections that they don't have in their mind, but I also want to tackle the objections they do have. And that's like, I'm going to say that again because that's like a very important
Hmm.
idea, which is don't want to introduce objections they don't have, but I do want to address the objections they have in their mind already but have not stated. So I do that, the latter part of addressing objections they have in their mind but haven't stated, by making sure they agree on the problem and the ideal solution. Now, the thing that I'm concerned with, and I don't know if
That's
this is
interesting.
true, so I could be wrong here, is that by going too deep in their existing sales process, you might be freaking them out over change management. Because, and I don't know, are you selling to sales ops people or are
Interesting.
you selling to sales managers?
Sales managers mostly.
Okay, so sales ops people freak out about their process, but if it's sales managers, I would really specifically focus on the dream outcome and not get into the tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of that, those tactical sales process, where does it fit in stuff, that's onboarding. That's certainly like if I'm a sales manager, I'm like, oh my God, I got to implement this and I got to put this in my sales process and I got to think about it. You want this to, in their minds, to feel like, have you used the software Fathom?
No.
It's for Zoom. It's basically you click on a Zoom, the Zoom, the screen sharing thing, or the video conference tool, and it
Mm-hmm.
automatically loads, automatically records, automatically transcribes, has an AI recording, it shares out to everybody. It integrates into your CRM with, you don't click anything.
Nice.
You don't do anything. You don't implement anything. It's just there and it's beautiful. I'm your ideal customer profile in some sense. So imagine, but I don't have the right need because I don't get a bunch of inbounds like you do, well, like these guys do. But let's assume that I did. I have the same
Mm-hmm.
mind's eye, which is my sales process, if they're a good sales manager, and most people are not horrible, they're going to be like, I have a sales stack, a tech stack, and I have a process, and those are my babies. That's my world. That's like, I drill my guys. Think about these sales managers. They hire their guys, their agents,
Mm-hmm.
whoever it is, and they drill them on this process. You got to use this tool and you got to use this process. And there's training guides around it. And so that's where their world is. So when you go, oh, you put this into your sales process, it's like, oh, no, you don't. You're not putting that in my sales process. And so there's going to be some, I think, the ICP, in my humble opinion, again, as a sales VP, that is something that would trigger me. So for me, my suggestion, if you were selling to me, is don't even go there. Just simply say, hey, do you want better response times for your sales reps?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. We can do that. It is simple as when the form comes in, it calls them. And then I might say, well, how does that happen? It's a very simple integration. You don't have to worry about it. It's not going to disrupt you at all. We can do it at all. We can do it in X
Mm-hmm.
amount of time, 30 minutes on a one onboarding call. There's no custom code. It's a plugin. It's ready to go. That's the objection. It assuages my
Mm.
fears. I do not go deeper. Because deeper is more fear, more, oh, that sounds shitty. Oh, I have to train this guy. Oh no, it's going to disrupt this guy. So I want to completely just block off that realm. So for anybody else listening, think about what areas are you over describing your solution technically. And this actually happens with engineers a lot, is because they want to talk about the features and the implementation, but that's actually not what gets the sale. And so rather focus on the dream outcome, which is faster response times, which makes more money. So you want more money by getting guys
Mm-hmm.
on the phones all the time, right? Great. I have that. Can I show you? Great. Are you happy? What questions do you have? How do you implement? It's very simple plug-in. So on the objections, how do you implement, or what do we do next? Very short. It's very simple. Make it sound like it's a dream, assuming it is. Now, if you might be thinking, how easy is this to
It's
integrate?
But yeah, it's basically like, because either way, we're not gonna do the integration right then and there. But it's like, it's also just describing it as like, it's super easy. We have an integration with your CRM. We'll hop on a half an hour onboarding call and we'll set it up for you.
Yeah, exactly. I would say it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. We'll jump on an onboarding call and it'll be ready to go. We click a couple buttons and you don't have to worry about a thing. I would make it sound as as least technical as possible. Uh, that's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first point, is that you got to make sure you don't overdo that. I would get rid of the free trial and
Mm-hmm.
I would go for the close right on the call. And you can ask, there's many different closes you can go for. I just like the simple one of, hey, does this look like it will get you what you want? A very simple question like that. Does this look like, yes, it was great. Well, let's get you started right now. In assuming, do you understand what the prices are? I would probably take them through like a pricing thing. Now, before I do that, I
Mm-hmm.
generally, in my pitch, again, you can see this, there's a whole pitch structure I have in the free resources in the schoolroom where you can steal it. I believe in a value calculator. So price is always anchored. What I mean by
Mm-hmm.
that is, when I used to go door to door, I was number one out of 800 people because I did one thing differently. There's a number of reasons, but the one thing I did differently above all other things was I anchored people at a high price. And I naturally did this because I saw that it worked tremendously. And it made sense intuitively, which is if you ask for more money, you're going to get more money. Now, most people draw the conclusion of if you ask for more money, you're going to get rejected and the sale's over. So the way that you do that in B2B SaaS is not raise your prices necessarily. It's that you put a number that's much scarier and bigger than any number that you are currently going to quote them. So the way that I do it, and there's many ways that people do this. The way that I do it in B2B SaaS or even in agency world is I quantify the problem in a way that is meaningful to them. So in terms of like a sales manager, this is very quantifiable, which is I would say, how many inbound leads do you get per day? I would literally have a spreadsheet. You don't have to make this fancy. Go in Google Sheets, share your screen. And I'd have a pre-set out formula, bunch of fields. How many leads do you get per day? How often do your guys respond under 5 minutes? Okay, so let's say there's, we get 100 inbounds per day. Let's say that only 20% of the time, so literally like 20 of them get under 5 minutes, 80 of them are over 5 minutes. And let's say that you have like a likelihood of close formula of some sort of over 5 or under 5. And let's say likelihood of close goes down 50% if it's over 5, et cetera. You could come up with some ratio, something that makes sense, something that's plausible. Or what I like to do is I like to ask the person. So I would say, if it's over 5 minutes, do you know, because this might be a blind spot for them. You have to understand where their head is at. And this is, if somebody says, I don't have the problem, I also use this whole value calculator to educate them on the problem. If they go, I don't have a problem with guys. Yeah, they get to them when they get to them. It'll be through a few hours, but it doesn't matter. If that's their objection, I'll be like, are you open to me showing you a value calculation so I can show you what's actually costing you? Now, I use that for a close, even if they're very excited, or I use it for an objection. They always end up at the value calculator. And I say, what do you think you lose? And so I let them use their own numbers. Now, I have a pre-built formula so they can adjust the number. Either way, at some point at the end of that calculation, you come out with a cost associated with the leads that they're like, okay, you're right, 80% don't get touched within 5 minutes. And we agree it doesn't that costs us 40% of closes. Therefore, across a full year of all these deals coming in, we're losing X number of deals and the average order value is X dollars. And therefore the quantifiable value of this problem is $1 million, whatever it is. You then say, do you agree that that's the right number? And they'll just say, yeah, I do agree that's the right number. When that occurs, you go, okay, let me show you what it's going to cost you to fix this right now. You show them the price, whatever very small relative number it is, and you say, we can do that right now and save you the difference, $888,000. Are you ready to buy? You're ready to make this decision? Because it seems like a no-brainer to me. Great. What's your credit card? Right on the phone. And that's what I would do.
Nice. It's interesting. Yeah, we've never tried a direct close like that.
Yeah, it seems
Next
to me
couple of
that,
demos, let's just give that a try,
yeah, I certainly would do it. I would even be willing, if you want to set me up on a demo, I would try to close for you just to see what happens. I honestly think that would work. Because there's just two things. Is that one, I think that engineers generally over focus on features and technical implementation, which usually turns off, it raises a huge objection. And number two is you're trying to introduce trust through free trials because you think it's a softer close. Because another thing engineers and non-salespeople like to do is they don't like to ask for the money. And so they go through the soft close of a trial, but they don't realize they're introducing friction. So those are the kind of obvious
it's a lot
things.
easier. Yeah.
It's a lot easier, but it's also a lot less lucrative. And by easier, you mean it's emotionally easier. Because it's actually harder. It's harder to
it's
go.
emotionally easier. So
Yeah. I think there's a lag. Can you still hear me?
a little
Ray?
bit. What I was gonna say is, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. It's just a lag. It's okay.
Cool. So yeah, what I was saying is that especially since, when I built up this whole sequence and I'd never, done demos or anything like that before, right? Coming from the engineering world, a lot of choices were made over like, okay, well, what is the thing that's easier for me to attempt to do, right? Like there's certain things that it was hard enough just to do a demo, right? So, what ways can I soften the blow on myself as I'm learning to do these things? And then it's funny because a lot of that, as you pointed out, kind of then just got cemented because that's the way we do things. That's the way we do demos, right? We do our
Mhm.
demos and then we pitch the free trial and we send them off, right? And then we just never even consider altering how the close works
Mhm.
because that's how things have always worked. So that's really given me a lot to think about.
Yeah, but that's why I'm a believer. It took me a long time to get to this point of view. Is I didn't believe in hiring coaches and fractionals up until about 2 years ago, and then I decided I was going to hire a fractional and a coach for
Hmm.
everything in my life. So I have a diet coach, I have a workout coach, I have a jujitsu coach, I have a everything coach, and it has made me the biggest spots of our growth are not in the 99% of things that we do. It's in that like one small thing in that pile of activities that actually will unlock everything else. And so it's like the old adage of like the Tiger Woods golf coach. Tiger Woods is the best golfer, was the best golfer in the world. Why did he have a golf coach? Because the golf coach can see that one little like instep that needs to go over 2 inches. And that's the thing that makes the difference, or his elbow's off a little bit.
Hmm.
So I just think I'm a believer in that because it will just save you from going down the wrong path. So that's my suggestion for you. Because again, if you had done this a bunch, even if you had done this a bunch, like I have an email coach, one of the email coaches in the
Hmm.
group now, and we're going to be working together. I'm going to be sending him some business from the group. Uh, but the idea is, look, you can't be an expert in everything. I am a overall CRO VP of sales expert, but I am not a, automation clay expert on outbound email. I'm pretty good at copywriting.
Hmm.
I am not an
Yep.
expert copywriter. And so even when it's like same thing with engineering, it's like, I'm sure you are fantastic at certain elements of engineering, but I'm sure there's certain things where you're like, I would have to go get a resource on that. Uh, so I just believe that's an important idea. And
Yep.
I think
Exactly.
that you should consider that on the growth side as well. So
No, that's a real good point. Yeah.
So I know we've been on for a while. Was there anything else you wanted to cover? I think this has been a fun conversation. I think we got into some pretty cool tactics for the audience, so I think this will be helpful for them. What else do you think we should cover before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, yeah, we covered a lot of stuff that I thought we were gonna cover, and went into some stuff that I didn't think, but thought that was real good. I guess okay, I did have one idea that we've been floating around on our end that I wanted to run by you, kind of get your feedback. So we've come up with an idea for a service that would be complementary to our product. And it's something that we could either offer to people for free or even something that we could charge and maybe give for free to some prospects. But the idea is to do almost what we're calling like a sales response audit, right? So somebody who doesn't have Callingly, or maybe even like they do have Callingly, or some portion of their team has Callingly, we run a test. We submit some leads onto the web forms, and then we keep track of, how quickly does someone reach out? Do they leave a voicemail? Is it a good voicemail? Do they send text messages? Are they, and then in the next 2 weeks, how many times do they follow up? How many times do they call? How many times do they text? Maybe even throw some email in there. And we can use a lot of our software to kind of power this. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, we give them an audit, a report card, and we tell them, hey, this is where your sales team's doing good and where your sales team's not doing so good. And then the places where you're not doing so good, here's how our software can help you. So that's been a thought of something that we're thinking of implementing, and I'd love to get your feedback on it.
So this gets into the productization side of the equation, which I think in the sales world, I think is overlooked to a degree. But when I go into a business, I'm just speaking now to the audience generally. When you're thinking about like what's the biggest win you can have, like we just talked about, the biggest win was in this case getting rid of the free trial. In my opinion, that'd be a good test to do. And anything I say is debatable. I'm just
Mhm.
speaking from my experience. From a productization standpoint and a pricing standpoint, that is generally the place where you can double or triple revenue overnight. Uh, it's the first thing I do. It's the first lever I pull in on any business I get into is like, where can I increase price or where can I add an additional service on top of a software platform or a fracture out an existing software offering into multiple opportunities. And
Hmm.
because it's just such an easy way on the same demo for the same amount of unit of time of effort. You put all these people into a list, you got them all on the call, and you're pitching them all. It really just comes down to like, what are you offering them? And so if you can offer, what's your current productization look like? How many different services or tiers do you have in your product level?
We have two. We have a 25 per seat or a 35 per seat, depending on if they're doing calls or calls and SMS.
Got it. So I probably would have a third tier. And the third tier is for the anchor. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing about, which I don't know. I completely got off. Did I even finish my thread on the anchoring? I don't know if I did, but it's the same idea here. That's kind of crazy that I didn't finish that thread. But the thread was when I went door to door, I would ask for $1,000 as the first ask. Uh,
Okay.
and and then only 3 out of 30,000 people of doors I knocked on ever said yes to that ask. But the $1,000 ask wasn't there to get the $1,000. Never was. It was always
Mm-hmm.
there to set up the third or fourth ask. And everyone goes, the third or fourth ask. It's like, yeah, the third or fourth ask, not the second ask. Because nobody would say yes to the 1,000. Even like there are 3 out of 30,000 would say yes to that. And then maybe a couple hundred would say yes to the 720, the
Mm-hmm.
$720 ask. So this is how the ask would go. And I'm using this as an example of the same thing you do on your productization, which is, okay, great, we're asking for $91 a day for PPS. We'd love you to get started. And they would say, no, that's out of my budget. And I'd say, no worries, not many people can do that. I understand. But more people can support at whatever it was, $2 a day. So 720. No, that's out of my budget. No worries. I get it. I totally understand. But look, I know that you care. And so I can tell you a lot more people are actually in that $1.50 a day. And I would keep doing it until I hit a level they were cool with. What I found was that it allowed me to double the next best person in the entire company out of 800 people. And the only thing that was different was that I guess you could say I had the balls to ask, but it wasn't even balls. I just knew tactically it worked. So it didn't create, at some point, it didn't require courage
Mm-hmm.
because it was like I just knew I was going to get more than them. And a prime example of this was I was going door to door with, and there was another guy on my street, and I even said this, I think, on a prior podcast, is that, and this guy was like, uh, he was like, poached my territory. Different. He was a competitive fundraiser, and he went to this old lady's door and he asked for some money, and she gave him like $20. And I got to the same door, and she's like, "I'm sorry, honey, I already donated. I can give you the same amount." And I said to her, "Look, I understand that that's what you did for him, but look, this is a big, important issue, and I actually was going to be asking for $1,000." And so
Nah,
went from $20 to $1,000, and people go, "You went for the 1,000 even though she anchored you at 20?" I'm like, "No, I'm going to re-anchor her." So it's like,
that's
it's
funny.
all about perception. And that's why like the value calculator is so critical. And that's why productization is so critical, is that it's a psychological impact, is that, what you believe $1,000 value is completely subjective. Like me, $1,000 to me now versus $1,000 to me 5 years ago versus $1,000 to me when I was 15 are completely different paradigms. And so you have to understand that's true for your prospect as well. And so when you have a version productization scheme, you are screwing your middle tier, because your middle
Mm-hmm.
tier should actually be where the most of the money comes from. But because you don't have a top tier, people are anchoring
Mm-hmm.
them. The middle tier is the high tier. So even if you had like this thing you're offering, I would make that a third tier, as a bolt on of like some really advanced analytics suite that allows them to audit their sales team and really understand them at a deeper
Mm-hmm.
level. Again, I don't understand the scope of the software or exactly what's feasible, but from a strategy standpoint, my suggestion would be to add that as a third product here. This is microconf 101, is that if you don't know what your pricing strategy is, start at the basic, double it for your middle, and then double the middle to the top. That's like the most basic. I would look at what competitors are doing too and see where you sit within the market. But I can tell you that we did that for the current company I'm with as a VP of sales, and it tripled average order value overnight, and it made the outbound B2B sales effort sustainable. And I'm even going further where like I'm now going to stop offering certain things at a certain company size because I want to continue to improve that average order value. But I think that this gets into the discussion of unit economics. I'm actually about to put a course out on this on the school group. But if your unit economics don't make sense, like if the amount that you're paying a salesperson or how much you're paying the email software or your ads or whatever doesn't it doesn't cost at least 3 times less than the net profit on the lifetime value, then you are running a non-profitable sales funnel. So the sweet number is bare minimum 3-to-1 LTV to CAC, cost to acquire a customer. And LTV, lifetime value, everyone always thinks it's revenue, and especially in like SaaS, because it's like there's not much cost. There's always a cost. There's always a cost to deliver to some degree. Now, the cost to acquire a customer is partially your email software, your ads, your sales costs, your commissions. But the LTV you have to account for cost of goods sold, which is always going to be, your infrastructure. Oh, we just lost power. Your infrastructure on your software and whatever it takes to support that software. So you got to build that in, and you as a sales leader now, the growth leader, have to be hyper focused on that number and making sure that 3-to-1 is at the bare minimum. But that's why, for me as a sales leader, I'm maniacally focused on increasing average order value per unit sold, because the higher it goes, the better that ratio looks like. And it looks like I'm flashing because my light's going out. But does that make sense? I just want to be. Does that answer your question?
So that makes sense in terms of pricing structure, which that's super helpful. Thank you. But I was curious. So you're saying that we should take that service that we're considering doing and add it to a higher tier as opposed to making it a separate service. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would do that. I would try. I mean, it depends on what your goal is. Like if you're doing it from a lead gen standpoint, you certainly could offer it as like a front end type of like offer. The only way to know that is to test it. So like you could this is very standard, well traveled path for like marketing agencies where they do a free audit. Let me audit your keywords. Let me audit your whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's the same idea where you could target sales managers on the email. You could send them like one thing that we're doing with my email partner is on very low volume email, sending on the first email, which is like the antithesis of what's air quotes right, an outbound cold email, sending a video with a very simple 1-minute video sales letter. And you could do something like this where you say, hey, I saw that you guys have a sales team or you have a bunch of realtors taking calls. I tried to call in and took you guys 40 minutes to respond to me. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have a sales letter, where you say, hey, Frank, you say exactly that. And you say, what I'd like to offer you guys is an audit. Because ultimately what you're doing is you're basically using real stats to give them, to prove the value. Like, so it's that
Yeah,
value
exactly.
calculator, but with proof. It's if you find that's a good hook, I would test it. Any idea is
Mm-hmm.
worth a test. So as long as you can like structure that in a way that's like a meaningful soundbite that you can digest in less than a minute, and to put it in cold email, put it in front of sales managers, see if that books meetings, and then run it and see what the conversion looks like. That's going to take you a month or two to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Test it for sure. Uh, I would say that before I would do that, I would try to do the value calculation and the pitch like I'm describing as a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what you're describing actually sounds like a powerful upsell on a third product tier that I would charge more
Interesting.
for. Because the sales manager, me as a sales manager, I really care about those types of stats. If that's a meaningful stat for me, like response time, and my CRM doesn't currently capture that, and I cannot train my sales
Mm-hmm.
staff or audit them on that basis, that's a gap in my knowledge. And so if you can
Yeah.
plug that gap, then that could be an upsell.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. But yeah, we can definitely run some experiments with some leads, and hell, we can even talk to some of our existing customers to see if this kind of audit, you know, if they'd be willing to pay for this kind of audit, right? Because then that could be the upgrade tier.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And the thing is like everything is about frame. It's all about context. So if you make it as this like nice kind of freebie thing that you do, it's going to become devalued in the person's mind. So if you frame it
Mm-hmm.
as the upsell premium thing you do because it's so valuable to know these stats and manage your guys and actually know, look, this guy doesn't respond fast enough. This guy isn't doing what he's supposed to do. You
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have him on your team. That's a fundamental KPI for the success of an individual sales rep, which me as a sales manager, that is a fundamental important truth. Uh, so if you frame it the way I just framed it, all of a sudden I'm willing to spend a lot of money per month to figure that out. Now, and again, all of this is debatable. You have to try it, you have to test it. Now, if you
Mm-hmm.
frame it as, hey, look, this is like, we want to show you the value of what's it's costing you and we do this free service, then, and
Mm-hmm.
that's still very valuable, you might hook people and it might be worth it to you. So, and you could do both. You could do both. You could have that as the upsell. Hey, we're going to offer this to you guys as an audit. By the way, do you want that same level of analytics? That's our highest product here. So this is where we
Mm-hmm.
got back to like the black box of like not knowing where to go type of thing.
Yep.
All of these are viable hypotheses, but you have to test. You have to test. Now, this is where, again, the mentor comes in because this is not like the B2B outbound offer world is not a a new journey. People have gone down this path 1,000 times. And so the key thing is just don't travel it alone. That's my biggest thing. I'm
Okay.
so bullish on the mentors. So
I like that.
so I think that should cover it. Is there any other fun subjects you wanted to cover?
No, that was it. Yeah, and thank you for your advice on that. And like almost, but that's more than advice. It's almost like a completely different perspective
Yeah.
on some of our ideas and things that we're tackling. So I appreciate that. It helps to get a different viewpoint.
And look, the number one thing I'll say is that ideas are just ideas. You know, you got to test. So again, it comes from a base of experience and a lot of trying myself. So I kind of get a sense of what works. But the only way you can
Mm-hmm.
truly know is by going and doing it. But yeah, I highly recommend doing that. I think the quickest win for you is certainly going to be eliminating the trials and going for the direct close. The
Okay.
key thing for that though is that it this that's why the pitch is so important. That's the reason I wrote that 70-page book, is that if you don't get, like, you spent
Mm-hmm.
all this effort driving demand, getting people on calls, getting them to the demo, if you don't dial that pitch, if you don't have that right, if you're not getting like a 30 to 40% close, uh, I would be curious to know, what is your close rate? Do you know if it's above 20%?
Yeah, it's like 22.
22. Okay, so 22 is not bad, but it's at the fringe. It's at the edge. I would want to see like a
Mm-hmm.
30 to 40 on the low end. You know, when you know it's crushing, you're at like 50 to 60. I've seen 70, 80% close rates,
Yeah.
depending upon the market. But
Jeez.
at 20, you are on the low end. So there's either a question of qualification, like are you qualifying the right leads? Or number two is there a problem with the structure of the pitch and the offer? I bet you'd raise your close rate if you just eliminated the free trial. I think that would boost it a bit. And I think that you would
Yeah, that's
also,
interesting.
yeah, so you should watch those numbers as you try these things. The key thing is don't do everything at once. Like, it's like standard old A/B testing. It's like if you change 5 variables, you don't know what's the impact. So I would
Yeah.
try eliminate the
It's
free
hard not to do
offer.
everything at once, right? You want to try everything.
Yeah, but good thing about sales is that if you have a good velocity on the pipeline, and let's say, how many pitches per day do you do?
Um, 4 probably about.
4? Yeah, so so you're getting 20 per week. Yeah, 2 weeks of testing that. You'll have it's in the statistical significance world, that is not nearly enough. In the intuitive, you can feel it world, from a sales perspective, it is plenty. So you'll know,
Mm.
and I'd be curious to see what your feedback is when that happens. If you find that you're having problems closing on the direct approach, I would bet that I would be curious. That's where I'd like to try a pitch, because I'd be curious to know if it's because your sales ability, and this is not meant to be putting you down, but that would potentially be a question of like, are you tactically handling the
Mhm.
pitch correctly? Because look, there's a reason there's professional salespeople. You know, that's a part of reality.
Yeah. No,
So
that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks Leon for coming on and sharing your journey. I know it's an inspiration to me for sure. I deeply respect what you've done, and I think building software and launching it into the world, especially in B2B, is tremendously scary for me and difficult. And I've done it myself, and I respect anyone who has. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for coming on. And where can people find you online? How could they contact you?
Sure, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's been great. You can find me callingly.com. You can reach out directly, leon@callingly.com. So simple as that.
Great. Well, we'll talk to you guys later. Again, it's the Next Gen Sales Leader Podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Signing out.